I did not expect the tension to tighten this quickly, but the moment I started piecing together Randy's behavior and the latest developments of Beyond the Gates, I could feel something darker forming beneath the surface, something far more calculated than desperation. And now it is becoming clear to me that this is not just about survival anymore. This is about control, elimination, and a dangerous gamble that could destroy everyone involved. From what I am seeing, Randy is standing at a crossroads, and for the first time, I feel like he is not just reacting to pressure, but actively shaping the outcome in a way that could permanently shift the balance of power. Because when he receives the order, the weight of it hits him immediately, and I can sense his fear. Not just fear of failure, but fear of exposure, fear that everything he and Haley have built through manipulation and deception is about to collapse. Bill's decision to involve Joey in investigating Lynette changes everything, because this is no longer a quiet suspicion lingering in the background. It is now an active pursuit of truth, and that makes Lynette extremely vulnerable, but at the same time, it also puts Randy in an impossible position, because if Lynette is exposed, then the chain reaction could easily lead back to him and Haley. What fascinates me here is the moment Randy considers calling Lynette to warn her, because that instinct reveals something important. It shows that up until this point, he still sees her as an ally, or at least as someone whose survival is tied to his own. But then something shifts, something cold and decisive. And I can almost see the idea forming in his mind like a spark turning into a flame. He realizes that this is not just a threat, it is an opportunity. And that realization is where everything changes. Because instead of protecting Lynette, Randy begins to see a path where her downfall could actually secure his own safety, and more importantly, protect the long-term plan he shares with Haley. And I think this is the moment where Randy fully crosses the line, where he stops playing defense and starts playing offense in the most dangerous way possible. If Lynette disappears, if she is blamed, if she becomes the center of the scandal, then all attention shifts away from Randy and Haley, and suddenly their past actions become harder to trace, harder to prove, and maybe even irrelevant in the chaos that follows. But here's where I start to question whether Randy is truly in control of the situation, because while he may believe he is acting strategically, he is overlooking one critical factor: Joey. Joey is no longer trusting Randy, and that changes the entire dynamic. The fact that Joey previously assigned Randy to investigate the attack involving Haley and now seems reluctant to rely on him again tells me that Joey has already started to suspect that something is not right, and if that is the case, then Randy is already under quiet observation, whether he realizes it or not. So if Randy makes a move against Lynette now, if he tries to manipulate the situation or push blame onto her, there is a very real possibility that Joey will see through it. And instead of Randy escaping suspicion, he could end up confirming it. That is why I think Marcel's involvement could be a turning point. If Joey assigns Marcel instead of Randy, then Randy loses control over the investigation, and that is incredibly dangerous for him, because Marcel is not emotionally entangled in the situation. He does not have the same blind spots, and he is far more likely to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it points directly at Randy and Haley. And once Marcel starts digging, I do not think it will take long before things start unraveling, because Lynette is not the only one with secrets. The staged robbery, the manipulation involving Haley, the scheme to push Bill into firing Tomas, all of these threads are connected, and even if Randy believes he can isolate Lynette as the sole culprit, the reality is far more complicated. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I feel that Randy is underestimating just how much information is already out there and how many people are beginning to connect the dots. Kat and Tomas are already suspicious, and now Bill himself is starting to question Lynette, which means the circle of doubt is expanding. And once multiple people begin investigating independently, it becomes much harder to control the narrative. This is where Lynette becomes a very unpredictable factor, because if she senses that she is being set up, if she realizes that Randy might be turning against her, then she could retaliate, and that retaliation could be explosive. Lynette is not someone who would go down quietly. If she feels cornered, I believe she would expose everything, not just to save herself, but to drag everyone else down with her, and that includes Randy and Haley. So Randy's plan, while seemingly clever, is incredibly risky because it relies on Lynette remaining unaware or powerless, and I do not think that is a safe assumption. At the same time, I cannot ignore the legal implications that are starting to resurface. The mention of reopening a case against Lynette suggests that her past actions are not as buried as she might have believed, and if investigators start revisiting those old schemes, it could provide a foundation for new charges, especially if fresh evidence emerges. And this is where everything could spiral out of control. Because once the legal system becomes involved, it is no longer about personal manipulation or strategic deception. It becomes about hard evidence, testimonies, and accountability. And in that environment, secrets have a way of coming to light. I keep coming back to Bill's role in all of this because his growing suspicion is not just a subplot, it is a catalyst. Bill is methodical, and once he starts investigating, he does not stop halfway. And if he uncovers even a fraction of the truth, it could set off a chain reaction that exposes everyone involved. And if Bill discovers that Lynette was not acting alone, that she was working with Haley and indirectly connected to Randy, then the entire structure of lies collapses. What makes this even more intense is the emotional undercurrent beneath all of these actions. These are not just strategic moves. These are betrayals. Randy considering sacrificing Lynette, Haley being entangled in schemes that could destroy her, Lynette potentially being set up by someone she once trusted. All of this creates a volatile mix of fear, anger, and desperation. And when emotions run that high, people make mistakes. That is why I do not think Randy's plan will go as smoothly as he hopes. There are too many variables, too many people involved, too many hidden motives, and one wrong move could expose everything. If Marcel steps in, if Joey continues to dig, if Bill uncovers the truth, if Lynette fights back, any one of these factors could derail Randy's strategy. And yet, despite all of this, I can still see why Randy is tempted to take the risk, because from his perspective, doing nothing is just as dangerous. If Lynette is exposed without him controlling the narrative, she could implicate him and Haley, and then it is over. So in a way, this is a desperate attempt to get ahead of the situation, to shape the outcome before it shapes him. But desperation rarely leads to clean solutions. It leads to chaos, and that is exactly where I think this story is heading. A collision of secrets, betrayals, and revelations that will not only threaten the lives of Randy, Haley, and Lynette, but will also redefine the relationships between everyone involved. Because once the truth starts coming out, there is no going back. Trust will be shattered, alliances will crumble, and the consequences will be irreversible. As I look ahead, I cannot shake the feeling that someone is going to fall, not just metaphorically, but in a very real, devastating way. And the question is not just who will be exposed, but who will survive the fallout. Randy believes he has found an opportunity, but what if this is actually a trap? One that he is walking into willingly, blinded by his own ambition and fear. Because in a game like this, the biggest mistake is thinking you are the smartest person in the room. And right now, I am not convinced that Randy is